Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined in person, right? In person by Jennifer Jue-Steuck. Stuck, we're pronouncing
Yes.
it. Yeah, it's German for peace. Is not
Okay.
as in war and peace, but as in piece of cake. And Jennifer and I have been meaning to get together for about a year or so, and she's finally made it to Yorkshire. And keen listeners to the show will remember Jennifer has been on before. So welcome to the show for the second time. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, so we're doing this on my computer, looking at each other on the video screen,
Double.
and a double, yeah. And it's a little bit of a weird situation, but we're doing we're rolling with it. We're laughing with it.
Yes.
So last time, Jen and I talked about healing. Today, and there's a link to that first episode in the show notes, listeners. Um, and today we're going to talk about thriving because that's what Thriving Adoptees is all about. So, what does thriving mean to you, Jen?
Wow. Okay. So thriving. So just for the record, I didn't realize we were talking about thriving today. I thought we were talking about healing, but I think that two and two go hand in hand. So thriving to me, I think, means blooming your best wherever you are planted, taking whatever challenges, personal experiences that you might have, and whether at the time you thought it was negative or positive or however you felt about it, taking it and transforming that experience into something new, elevating and enhancing the human experience. That's what thriving means to me today, at least.
Today,
Mhm.
yeah. So yeah, it does shift, doesn't it? The way that we see life, the way that we see words changes over time. So elevating. What did you say? What was the one?
And I think I said enhancing and elevating just the human
The
experience,
human,
our human experience.
our human
Yeah, and
experience.
how
Yeah.
we collectively, all through our collective experiences, help one another to learn how to thrive in different kinds of scenarios, situations, circumstances. And it connects to something I was going to talk to you about today. And I was curious about your thoughts about legacy confidence, because I've been thinking lately as an adopted person. Am I still allowed to talk about
Of
adoption more?
course,
Oh,
of course, yeah.
okay.
You can talk about whatever you like.
Okay, I was thinking today about how we as adopted people enter space. When we enter a room, or let's say even now, it's using technology, sharing space. How I was thinking about how I've often struggled with not feeling very confident and feeling very awkward and really shy and not really understanding why that was. And then I suddenly realized, like this last week, that I think I struggle with what I'm calling legacy confidence. And so part of thriving for me is learning how to lean into my own legacy confidence more. And what I mean by that is, even though we might not know about our biological backgrounds, I don't at least, that we don't have that contextualization and that foundational knowledge of where we come from. I think that having legacy confidence means, regardless of whether or not you know or you have missing pieces of your background, that you can come into a space feeling proud of who you are and feeling confident about who you are, and knowing that you still have a legacy, you have a family legacy, and whether it's known or not known, how to tap into that inner resilience and connection, I think.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. And as you're talking about that, I was thinking that you used to do loads of public speaking.
Yes.
Yeah. So, like most people, that's apparently the second people people fear death, and then public speaking is second or something like that. It's a big fear thing.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah, it's a big fear thing. But so you must have had some confidence to do that, or you must have had some confidence, or maybe you just ignored your nerves, right?
I must have, I think it was a process for me. I think thriving on stage or thriving in public speaking is, I remember being so nervous about it when I was 9 and I had to give my first presentation and I was shaking. I mean, I was so nervous. I had to talk about Laura Ingalls Wilder, Little House on the Prairie. We were doing book presentations about novels we were reading at school. And then I think what happened is in high school I was part of Model United Nations, and so I just started to have to give so many talks being part of that club, and really impromptu. I think I just became really comfortable. So I think part of thriving is just practicing putting ourselves in those situations that could maybe make us or used to make us uncomfortable and getting comfortable with falling, and that's something I think as an adopted person I've also had to learn in terms of thriving. How do we thrive if maybe it's adoption related or not, but if we're not very comfortable with falling, I think it can be challenging to thrive because we have to learn. Lately I've been thinking I can only succeed as fast as I can fall. I have to get comfortable with falling, with making mistakes. And I think I wouldn't say I was a perfectionist, but I think earlier I felt like a lot of pressure to get things right and to get them right early the first time, to do really well in school, to be very high achieving. And I always felt like I didn't want to let people down by making a mistake. But now I realize, you know what? And it's okay. It's okay to, and in fact, it's great. It's like make more mistakes. I'm telling myself, make a lot of mistakes. That's part of my thriving process. And part of that is learning how to skateboard. I'm learning how to skateboard for the first time. And that's really helping me to thrive actually with this whole getting comfortable with making mistakes process. Sorry, I think I ran away with your question and took it somewhere else.
That's okay. That's okay. For me, when we get near this idea of failing or falling, whatever, I remember seeing a little kid fall over. I think he was in the supermarket, right? So I saw this little kid fall over. His maybe his shoelaces weren't done up or something. Anyway, he stumbled and fell over. And I looked at him, and he seemed to be okay in himself.
Mhm.
But then he looked to his mum to see her reaction. And isn't that how we learn? We learn from how other people react to us and react to our events. So if the mum is concerned,
Mhm.
right? If the
Mhm.
mum thinks it's falling over, or she's
Mhm.
worried about a kid, or she's crying, or she goes into some sort of spin out about well, come on, and just goes rushing up
Mhm.
to little Johnny or Jasmine or Jen, right? Then the child learns that falling over is bad.
Mhm.
And the flip side of that, so the story goes, we're talking about failing in business here. Think about Richard Branson, the
Mhm.
Virgin Atlantic, the entrepreneur, the Virgin Atlantic owner, and lots of different stuff. His mum. So the story goes, right? His mum used to put him out of the car, uh, like 3 miles away from home, and he had to find his own way home, right? So we've got two two completely different attitudes to risk or danger there,
Mhm.
and he wasn't bothered. So he was um, yeah, he wasn't scared. He was finding his own way.
Mhm.
She was teaching him how to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, comfortable in the unknown. Whereas you got some tiger mum that's worried to death about the fact that the kid has fallen and helped themselves. And we learn our confidence from the people around us and what they do most of the time.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And that's such a good point of and also I saw a 2-year-old fall down in a park a few weeks ago, and some parents, they rush to go rescue their child, and
Yeah,
they say like, "Oh, are you okay?" Because the little kid, the 2-year-old, started to cry. But that I was really impressed that mom, she didn't even turn around. She just kept walking, and she said, "Get back up," just very quietly. "Get back up, and follow me. Keep going."
yeah.
And I thought that was such a great
That's the right thing.
lesson.
Yeah,
Yeah, because my mom did not do that.
yeah,
My mom definitely did not just say, "Get back up."
yeah.
So it's harder though when you're older and then you have to learn, okay,
Well, that's
actually you
it.
need to
Yeah.
get up.
But a lot of people that learn businesses early, they have less on the line, right? They haven't got a mortgage, they haven't got a family to support.
Yeah,
The earlier they start, they've got less on the line. They haven't got anything, so there's nothing at risk.
right.
Whereas, I think of somebody who's maybe in a high, high-powered corporate job. Well, they can't jump because the whole lifestyle has been built around the consistency
Right.
of they're living within their means, but they're on a
Hmm.
big salary. They've got the private healthcare if they're in the States, and obviously all that goes when they lose. The other thing that's popping into my head is about me and learning stuff off my dad, right? So I remember a conversation probably about 12 years or so ago. Uh, we we were talking about fear of failure, and I said to something like, what's the point of that? Or, asking a question about that. He said, well, I was thought that fear of failure, that kept me on my toes, right? It kept me playing at the best of my game, top of my game. And I said to him, well, it might have done, Dad, but it stopped you being happy.
Hmm.
And a tear came to his eye
Oh, wow.
because he saw the truth in that,
Oh.
right? And he hadn't seen that before. But I remember as a kid, we were away on holiday, and my dad said something like, "I wonder if we'll have a business. I wonder if I'll have a business when I get home."
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because we're going back 50 years, right? So there's
Oh,
there's
okay.
no, he wasn't calling into work. There's no
Right.
mobile phones. There's no internet. There's no
Right.
email. And so he, I firmly believe that we learned this, or I've learned this confidence. Well, I've learned a lot from my dad. So I tend to go from extreme, naive overconfidence
Mhm.
to big fears
Oh, interesting. Okay.
because that's what he was like.
Oh,
That's what he was like. But he
okay.
he 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 didn't let us know about the fear. But that was going on for him. That's why he said, I always had that feeling, fear of fear of failing, because I thought that was a good thing. It kept me on my toes. So he'd had that all the way through his business life.
Mhm.
So
Wow, but you said it also kept you from being
happy, and
happy.
it did. And my dad
Hmm.
didn't. I've never seen him cry. I've
Oh,
never seen him shed a shed
oh,
a tear.
really?
No,
Oh,
no, no.
okay. So that was very
British boys don't cry. British men don't cry.
okay.
Simon Ben does.
Wow, okay. That's really interesting. So what does it mean? I'm curious, what does thriving mean for you then? Because obviously, Simon and I were catching up just now, and I didn't realize that lately you've really been having a lot of discussions, it sounds like, on thriving.
Yeah, that's the whole focus now,
Right.
thriving, because some people didn't like the word healing, and
Mhm.
also it allowed a broader conversation, I think.
Mhm.
And the I heard something yesterday uh, about healing, and like, well, we only need to heal if we think we're wounded.
Right. I see. Okay. Right.
So are we wounded? Nancy Verrier would say that we are. What's wounded? I mean, we're into a whole different kettle of bananas on a different.
I personally don't think that we're wounded. However, I don't think though that precludes the possibility that one could still heal. I don't, for me personally, I don't think we have to be wounded to heal because for me, I feel like, and this is just more generally, I feel like, and it's not even an adoption topic per se, but that who isn't healing from something in their life, whether it's the loss of a parent, loss of a job, loss of, community, a change, maybe you lost a baby, you maybe had a miscarriage. I've had a miscarriage. I mean, so even if I wasn't adopted, I feel like there might be things that I might be healing from, but that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily wounded. Well, for me at least, I don't
Yeah.
think about it that.
No, no.
Well, what do you think?
Uh, well, I was in publishing, so sometimes I can take things too literally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like, well, but I was listening to a podcast on the way back from the swimming pool today, from the teacher of a guide that I really respect, and he was talking about this sort of thing. You know, how do we heal, or how do we grow? How do we transform? How do we see the essence of who we are? And he was talking all about basically openness. It's our beliefs. I've heard this before. Like our beliefs are like bouncers, right? Bouncers at a nightclub, right? So
Okay.
beliefs. The bouncer doesn't let the kid in because he's got trainers on. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And the belief acts in the same way. So for many adoptees that I've spoken with, they don't believe that they can heal.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now that's a big belief to have, right?
That's huge, massive.
But it all goes into it goes into what we mean by healing. So you're talking about healing uh, as after a loss. I would say, rather than a wound. You're saying you don't need to be wounded to
Right.
heal, but
Right.
what you were talking to me, you talking about, miscarriage, or loss of a parent, and
Mhm.
these things, right? So uh, people wouldn't use wound uh, in respect to the loss of a parent, would they?
Probably
Or
not.
the death of a parent.
Except maybe in the adoption world, I feel like we do have the loss of our parents. I mean, that's why we were of our biological parents, and that's why we were adopted. And so that's why I've always personally felt like it wasn't really appropriate to call myself wounded necessarily. For me, everyone's
Yeah, yeah,
different.
everyone's different, right?
Yeah,
So, I would say that, well, what's wounded? What is wounded? What
yeah.
is wounded? Well, I think my take on it, just me, would be our sense of selves, right?
Hmm.
And our feelings. Our feelings are wounded, right? We have wounded feelings, and our sense of self. But is our sense of self who we are? No, that it's just our sense of who we are. So, with this, we talk about it quite a lot on the podcast. This up, uppercase S self. So you've got the the
Lowercase.
lowercase s, the
Mm-hmm.
little s self,
Right.
right, which could be described as the ego,
Okay.
right? And that could also be described as the sense of self. And
Okay.
then we've got the uppercase S self, which is what some people would call consciousness or awareness, or the truth, the essence of who we are, our
Mm-hmm.
essence.
Mm-hmm.
And that one of the great gifts we've got in today's world is we've got this guy called Dick Schwartz. He created this thing called internal family systems, and he talks about the uppercase S self, and that's the self that is underneath our trauma, that is underneath our loss, that is underneath our psychology. So it's hidden, and the
Mm-hmm.
my take on trauma is trauma hides us. It doesn't hurt us. It hides our uppercase S self. And one of the this book, No Bad Parts, from Richard Schwartz, talks about the seven C's of the uppercase S self, right? So these are the characteristics, because and this makes this it gives clarity to the sorts of things. It gives clarity to the essence of the uppercase S self, to do the seven C's, and one of them, long story, right? Long way around this, but one of them is confidence. One
Oh,
of them,
okay.
another one of them is connectedness. And both of those things that you talked about, you mentioned both those words, confidence and connectedness.
Yes.
I don't know, I can't remember all the other C's off the top of my head, but one of the other ones is calm, right? Calm, confident. We put those words together a lot, don't
Yes.
we? Calm, confident, connecting,
Connected.
connected. Like, so we connect,
Mm-hmm.
you and me connect,
Mm-hmm.
right? Here, like 2 foot away from each other, and we connect via Zoom, and we're connect with everybody else, all the other people who've been on podcast going. So there's a sense of connection. If we go to an adoptee get together, we've got some shared experience, and
Uh-huh.
we feel connected,
Yes.
and that is big for us because many adoptees haven't felt connected in their own in their adoptive family. They haven't felt that
Right.
connected. They felt othered. They felt separate. They felt different. They
Mm-hmm.
felt odd. They felt like they didn't fit in. They felt othered.
Mm-hmm.
So thriving for me is all about is now I come to see it in on the back of what I just said. It's all about those seven C's. It's living from our uppercase S self. It's being calm, confident, connected, and all the other C's that I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, rather than calm, rather than being agitated or
Right.
anxious, confident rather than being worried.
Right.
Connected, feeling connected rather than disconnected or separate.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the ego is the separate self, isn't it?
Right.
We feel separate.
Yes, which one could argue is is an illusion, can be an illusion sometimes, or a dimension of it's a dimension of perspective, right? Because you're saying when we can tap into that uppercase S, then we are able to maybe feel more connected. If I understand this more
Definitely.
correctly, okay.
Definitely, yeah. So one of the characteristics of the uppercase S self
Yes,
is
right.
connectedness, connection. So in that space, we are there. So yeah, it is totally about perspective. It is totally about perspective.
Right.
And and so it is it's about our essence. It's about who we are. It's about the truth of who we are. And it's about how we identify. So we can identify with our lowercase s self, or
Mm-hmm.
we can identify with our uppercase s self. Or, like we can uh, done some poetry about this, and on some posts on Facebook. So we can think of we can look at the sky, and I'm looking at the sky now. We've got some pretty heavy duty winds going on, and we can look at the clouds and think that they're bad moods, and we can look at what looks like to be blue clouds, and we think that that's a happy mood. So we can look at sadness and happiness. But that little piece of blue isn't a little piece of blue. It looks like a piece of blue, but it is the sky. We are. we are the sky. We are the space in which um, the, the trauma storm appears, right?
Mm-hmm.
With yeah, the uppercase S is the sky. The
Okay.
trauma is the storm clouds.
That's a really interesting way to see it. I like that. I've never had someone say that to me in that kind of a
It's a
way.
Buddhist thing, I think, that I picked up along
Okay.
the way. I'm not a Buddhist, but
Okay.
I picked up from
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
But we're so identified with our lowercase s
Yes.
self. We feel separate. Yeah. We started off life in utero. We came out.
Mhm.
There was a somebody snipped
The cord.
the cord. We were physically separate,
Yes.
and then if we're an adoptee, we're there's a that physical separation
Right.
is bigger.
It's pronounced.
It's
It's more
pronounced.
pronounced.
It's
Yes.
pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, it's thousands of miles.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, halfway around the world.
Yeah,
And with barriers of language and culture,
yeah.
history,
And
everything.
that transracial adoption
Oh yeah,
experience adds a whole
another
another
dimension.
layer of complexity and
Oh,
dimension
absolutely.
to the trauma because
Yeah.
yeah, the felt so you we feel, but everybody feels separate. Well, most people in the world identify with their lowercase s sense of self. It's just that adoptees have that feeling a lot earlier, and transracial adoptees even more pronounced. It's all about the sense of because when like genetic mirroring and all these different things, different
Right.
challenges, yeah.
Right.
So it all adds to the sense of separateness.
Right. So I guess I'm wondering, this is fascinating. And I guess listening to you, I'm wondering then, how can we dive even deeper into what you're talking about with uppercase S and lowercase s? And what would you say then are maybe thoughts or tips or that you've been discussing that are really helpful then for
So
thriving?
so my general strategy for this is to find somebody that's further along the way and listen to them.
Mentoring sort of?
Mentor, yeah, a
Okay.
mentor, or one-to-one mentor, or like in a group mentoring,
Okay.
or read their books, or
Okay.
watch their videos on YouTube, or
Mm-hmm.
listen to their podcasts on Podcast Catcher, whatever we've got, or what else? Yeah, read the books, go on the retreats,
Mm-hmm.
find somebody who has who can see the uppercase as self more clearly.
Oh, I like that. Yes, to help you sort of just tilt your maybe change your angle, the way that you're
Exactly,
looking at
yeah.
things just a little bit. Because if you change it just a little, it can make everything look
It
quite
can make the
different.
difference, yeah.
Yeah.
So find a teacher who resonates.
Wow. Okay, so I met with a friend in London yesterday, and he was we weren't he's not adopted, but we were talking about just slowing down. And he was telling me about how he tries to slow down in everything that he does, and also that most people go around the world just reacting to everything. And I feel like that's connecting to what you're saying about this lowercase s, that if we are living and experiencing life through the lowercase s, then we would be quite reactive, right?
Yeah,
Um, but I think he was also encouraging us to sort of maybe he was trying to say by slowing down a bit, maybe we can get more in touch with that uppercase S that you're talking about, perhaps.
totally. Totally. Yeah. We've got so to go back to the analogy, we talk about the bouncers, the beliefs
Right,
being like bouncers. We need to find a big door, don't we, as well? We need
right.
to find a door. We need to find the space. We need to give ourselves the space for new ideas to uh, if we slow down,
Yes.
we're more likely if we slow down, we're more likely for new to have new ideas.
Right.
So there was this survey of where new ideas come from, new perspectives come from, and this was done in the States. And they said 90% of the ideas came to the executives not whilst they were brainstorming, that when they're in a meeting, they came to them when they were in the shower, right, or when they were driving to and from work. Obviously, this is before COVID and all that sort of
Right.
stuff, right? Okay. So we have the innovative new ideas when there is natural space, right? So apparently, when presented with this, one of the CEOs said, "So how many showers should my executives be having a day?" Right? It's not the shower. It's not the shower that creates the idea. It's when we're not thinking about stuff. So when we've put the problem on the back burner.
Hmm.
Yeah, so you can go to have you ever done this when you go to bed, like you've been thinking about a particular issue, um, in the evening, you can't find an answer, you wake up in the morning and the answer hits you straight away. Has that ever happened to you?
Yes. Oh, a lot. Yes,
Yeah. So
definitely.
the
Or when
best
you're relaxed. When I'm
when you
relaxed.
relax, yeah.
Yes.
So relaxed,
Yes.
open, in the shower, in your bed, walking the dog, driving the car, whatever.
Mhm.
When we're not thinking, like yeah, I used to. So I'm a recovering overthinker. If there was an Olympic sport, if there was an Olympic event in overthinking,
You would
then
win the gold
I
medal.
would be good, or at least podium. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I can relate.
Yeah. So,
Definitely.
but we look at calm again, right?
Right.
Calm and confident and connected. And isn't that the best? Isn't that the best time to be for us to have shifts in our perspective?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think I like this door. I mean, I'm looking up right now because I'm just at the sky and I'm thinking about the door and the bouncers and I'm visualizing everything and just thinking about you're right, just creating that space. How do we create that space internally to create that shift, to tap into that
Ah,
capital S so that we
we
can thrive?
we are that space.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm looking at you. Okay.
We are that space.
Okay. So do you want to add more about your
Well,
thoughts about that?
so we're back to the sky and the clouds, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay. So um, I'll shift slightly. Uh, everybody talks about being triggered, don't they, at the moment?
Yes.
I got triggered. I got
Mm-hmm.
triggered. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when we get triggered? There's an explosion, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we get triggered, it's like somebody pulls the trigger on the gun and there's a bang, right? Okay. So there's an explosion. So if we take that into our own into our if you link that to identity,
Mm-hmm.
we are the space in which that explosion happens.
Mm-hmm. Right. Definitely.
Yeah, we're not
Yeah.
so it's if we're triggered, so it might be anger, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So we are the space we're not the anger, we're the space in which the anger happens.
Right. Definitely. Yes. Right.
Or some people might say the witnessing presence. Might be.
Right.
I say the witnessing presence.
I like that witnessing presence.
Presence. Yeah,
That's nice.
that's nice.
Yeah, that's
The space. We are the space. Right? It's like being, oh, I've got to be more open for change to happen. Well, no, we are open. We have to see our openness. We have to identify uh, well, going back to an adoption thing, right? We have to, we ident, I've done this, and many of us do this. We identify with the trauma, which is the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
We don't identify with which the sky, which is who we are.
Mm-hmm. I
We
can see that.
we see everybody else
Right.
obsessing about the trauma,
Right. Yeah.
uh, and saying that we can't heal.
Mm-hmm.
We start to believe that we can't heal because somebody tells us.
Mm-hmm.
And author, like there's an author,
Mm-hmm.
right? An author writes a book, and somebody with authority, same word, right?
Right. Yes.
Authority,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
So we read Nancy Verrier's book that tells us that we're wounded,
Primal wound.
yeah, and we believe that we're wounded.
Mm-hmm.
We have a diagnosis, and now we're stuck with it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I'm just thinking too that, that's such a, okay, I'm circling back to the adoption community again with thriving because I think you're so right because I didn't, I grew up relatively isolated as an adopted person. I didn't know a lot of other adopted people when I was growing up, except for my brother, who's adopted from Seoul, South Korea. And so, but we didn't, he's younger than I am. We didn't sit around talking about our adoption.
No,
We were too busy playing. But I mean, I think I grew up very isolated, not part of any adoption group. And it wasn't until I was in university in New York City that I started to meet other adoptees and I went to my first adoption group. And I think you're right. That became in a way my first mirror. And I love how you say that we are the space. Because if we think about ourselves as the space, what I think about then is what is our responsibility? If we are the space, what is our responsibility to community as adopted people, as adopted speakers, leaders? Because how we think about ourselves, if we're thinking about ourselves from the uppercase S self versus the lowercase one or not, can really become a mirror for younger generations of adopted people. And whether we intentionally or accidentally mirror something that, I don't know. It's just interesting. I'm not sure if you see what I'm saying, but
I do, and I think we've got to. I said about looking. What you said, how do we do this? How do we
yes.
thrive with that? And
Yeah.
I said, well, find somebody that's ahead of us on
Yes.
the journey, right?
Yeah. With
So
your
that's
adopted community.
yeah. So you give, but then we give back, right? So we
Right.
learn. There's people ahead of us on the
Right.
journey, and there's people behind us on the journey, and we give back, right? So we keep on moving. We keep on moving along on our own learning journey,
Yes.
and then we help others, and like we learn from people above us on the community, and we give back to people behind us on the community.
Exactly. And I guess when I'm thinking about thriving right now, and sorry, I'm not looking in the camera because I'm not,
That's okay.
I'm just trying to focus on what you're saying. So I'm thinking, and I'm quite visual. So if I
You
look
are
up,
very visual. Yeah.
so
If you ever meet Jen, right, don't wave your hands around because she won't look at your face. She'll just look at your hands waving. I saw you doing that, so you can tell somebody's visual. Yeah, yeah.
okay. Yeah, so
It's yeah.
I find it distracting actually to look at people when we're really trying to listen hard to what they're saying. So
Me
that's
too.
why I'm looking a bit more at the sky at the
Okay,
moment. So
cool.
just so you know.
Great.
And so but I was thinking about on the thriving aspect for adoptees, I've really struggled in my life with self-articulation as an adopted person. And when you say we are the space, I paused and Simon and I sort of exchanged glances here because I was just, to be honest, I was struggling with that, Simon. I was thinking, how are we the space? And I think for me personally, I feel sometimes a cloud of confusion about what kind of if we're the space, if I'm the space, if you're the space, what kind of a space are we? Because I think for me, that legacy confidence that I was talking about earlier, it's not understanding how do I occupy space when so much of the world around us, in England, for example, so many of the legacies of the royal family, or how we inherit things, how we inherit lands, names, the biological lineage is so highly valued. And so when you don't have access, I mean, I think you've reconnected, yes, with some of your family. Or
No.
oh no, okay,
Well,
sorry.
to an extent, I've spoken to a cousin a couple of times.
Okay.
I've spoken to one cousin once, twice, another cousin once. I got blown out. Told to go away by my biological father. I've
Okay.
had a letter from. I've had a couple of letters and Christmas cards from my biological uncle.
Oh wow, okay. And
That's the extent of it.
okay. Well, for me, that's enormous because I haven't
Yeah,
had
you haven't had
anything,
anything, no,
nothing.
no, no.
So to me, that's just like, wow, that's a wealth of, from
Yeah,
my perspective, that's a wealth of
yeah, yeah.
experience.
It's all relative, yeah.
Yeah, it's all relative.
Everything's relative,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So, but I was just thinking, wow, if I knew, okay, this is where I came from, and I had, this is my sort of legacy, and if the legacy of the space in which my biological family occupied the world, then I felt like I might understand how to feel more confident, because everything about relationships is, you know, it's so contextual. So if I know, for example, that I'm meeting the Queen or King of England, and I understand their legacy and their where they come from, and that long, long history of how far back they can trace their family. I mean, that I feel like I would be so incredibly legacy confident and legacy rich in my knowledge, versus if you don't know anything, how do you position yourself? And if you don't know how to position yourself, then how do you articulate or take space, or where is my space? And I'm just brainstorming out loud right now about it, and I think it creates,
Well, it is a
yeah.
brainstorm, and it
Hmm.
isn't. It's the opposite. It's the opposite of that calm, confident space, isn't it? You know, I
Yeah.
was talking about overthinking, right?
Mhm.
So I've got my own sorts of overthinking, and my
Mhm.
overthinking is different to your overthinking.
What kind of overthinking do you have?
Uh, how can I get more people to listen to the podcast? How can I get more people
Oh,
to? How can I
okay.
get more people to come on the podcast? How can I
Right.
get more people to buy into the Thrive course for adoption agencies? Have I spoken to that person?
Okay.
Why didn't that person email me back? Um,
Oh, I see.
when am I going to the pub tonight? When's my wife going to come back? You know, all these things. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, I understand what you're saying. Well, okay, so back onto the thriving topic then. So if we bring it back in, did
Yeah.
you want to ask me anything else about thriving, or talk
Well,
about
I,
anything
I
else
would
that's
say
happening?
that I would say that when I'm overthinking,
Hmm.
there's overthinking and then there's being cheesed off with overthinking, right? So you've got thinking.
Hmm.
I've said this a couple of times. I got it from a guy called Michael Neal over in the States. Um, we've got thinking and then we've got thinking about thinking.
Okay.
And it just layers on top of it. It layers on, for me, it layers on top of it itself. And I become a moron. I have more on my mind,
Okay.
right? And then I try and think my way out of that,
Right.
which only adds more thinking.
Yes.
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 Okay.
I understand.
And then I think, well, maybe I'd better put some music on or um, uh, fiddle with Facebook or go
Hmm.
for a swim or walk the dog or I
Hmm.
don't know,
Hmm.
or step back from it, step back,
Right.
um,
And slow down again, step back
step
in.
back. So step back from the the weather guy that's
Hmm.
obsessed with the clouds of thoughts, to the sky guy who is not bothered by the thoughts that go
Right.
in and out.
Right.
So
Okay. I see what you mean. Yes, you're in a different, very different space than the last chat that we had about a year ago, I think. I feel like. Because, wait, well, what do you think? Or
I don't know.
I just because I haven't spoken with you for a while, so I feel like you're just energetically quite different in this space that you're where you are on your journey. So this is really fascinating. And sometimes when you don't see someone regularly, it really jumps out at you more quickly when you feel
Yeah,
a shift in them versus if
totally.
you're with them every single day, you might not notice as easily, right?
So a mentor of mine back in the day used to say it's hard to see the picture when we're in the frame. It's hard to see the
Mm,
picture when we're
I
in the
love
frame.
that.
So yeah, we don't we don't see our we don't see change, our own change. That it becomes clear to us on in little moments
Yes.
when right. So I had one this week in the swimming pool. I just felt stronger somehow.
Mm,
I felt less bothered about being. Um, the pool's quite busy, so the water's quite choppy, and which means you can't get a smooth line through the water. You know, your body's bobbling up and down. Yeah. I was talking to. I haven't told you about this. I've been seeing a somatic experiencer woman therapist kind of for almost a year now, every month or so. And I was talking to her this about, I was talking to her about this sort of stuff on Monday. And then on Wednesday, when I was in the swimming pool, I felt stronger somehow. I felt
wow.
stronger.
Okay. But going back to because of the thriving topic again, I'm trying to stay on your thriving
Can I
topic. Oh,
just
sure.
hold on a minute? I'm just going to pause, ladies and gentlemen. Just on. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, where were we?
Uh, so you were talking about your
Oh
mentor,
yeah, the
and
somatic
if you're in
experience.
the frame, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to see the picture when in the frame. Yeah, so I just noticed it. I noticed on Wednesday. I just felt stronger. I felt less flustered in the water. I felt stronger, um, and I think it's down to some of the stuff that I explored that with Blanche, the somatic experience lady, on
Okay.
Monday, and then I saw it for myself. Right, so I think our change. It's hard to see the picture when we're in the frame, but
Mm.
every now and again we get a glimpse of our change.
I love that. I'm really going to remember that and think about that.
And that guy's the reason that I'm doing the podcast actually. Is his some things that he said to me years ago led me to where we are today.
Really? Wow. Okay. That's
Yeah.
mm.
But I'm supposed to be interviewing you. I'm
Oh,
talking to you.
no, no, no. And actually, in the middle of you talking, I just had to say I noticed your teddy
Oh yeah. Yeah.
because it's a
That's that.
special story, right?
Yeah.
Behind the teddy.
Yeah, yeah.
So and suddenly I just felt so moved and thinking about thriving and resiliency and thinking about having that foundation of those connection, calm, and what was your other C?
Confidence, yeah.
Confidence.
And there's
Yes.
four of us.
Oh, four others, right? The seven C's. Yeah.
Seven
I
seas,
wonder
yeah.
what the other.
Not the seven seas, I see the seven seas of the world. No, the seven letter C's.
Right. So yeah, just and I think for thriving, tapping into our sense of roots wherever they are. And I feel like the teddy is so symbolic.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally, yeah.
And so I just felt so moved seeing your teddy.
You talked about blooming,
Blooming your best
blooming your
wherever
best.
you were planted. Yes, I used to
Yeah,
always say that when I gave talks, adoption talks, about how do we bloom our best because we're planted all around the world. I was planted halfway around the world with my wonderful adopted family, and how do we bloom our best in maybe a
yeah.
different part of the world or a different context?
So, one of the things that we're doing some webinars coming up, and we a flower was a potential graphic. I was doing some graphics, and when you say blooming, right? So I think about flowers.
Yes.
I remember as a kid, you guys call it blacktop, we call it tarmac, right? So it's the stuff on roads.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember,
Or concrete.
or concrete. Well, yeah,
Asphalt. Asphalt.
asphalt is the black stuff. Yeah, concrete's the white stuff.
Oh, I guess you're
Maybe.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Yeah. So the black stuff, anyway,
Okay.
whichever it is. I remember we had some black stuff out in front of our house, when my mum and dad parked their cars, and I remember seeing a flower had broken through the asphalt. So you've
Mhm.
got this really big, heavy, smelly building material that
Mhm.
weighs tons and tons, right?
Mhm.
And then you've got this tiny little dainty flower, and the flower has somehow got through
Right.
like a foot of this
Yeah.
asphalt. Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah.
And that flower didn't go on a resilience course, did it?
Right.
It
No.
just its resilience was innate.
Mhm.
And it couldn't see its own resilience because it's a flower, it's not a person. And didn't have a mirror either, did it?
Right.
Didn't have a
Right.
mirror to hold up and say, look, how haven't I grown?
Right.
Am I riffing on this, right? So yeah, it's hard to see the picture when we're in the frame,
Right.
and it's very hard for a, a, a flower to see its own beauty because it hasn't got a mirror and it
It
hasn't got
just
any
is.
eyes. It
Yeah,
just
it just
is.
is.
But it just is
Mhm.
resilient.
Mhm. And
Somehow it's strong.
determined.
It's resilient. It's
It.
resilient.
Mhm.
It's determined. It's strong, but it's just doing its thing. It's
Right.
in its nature to grow.
I love that image. Yeah. So we should all be like that flower.
We
Or
should.
we could be. We could all be
Well,
like that,
well,
maybe.
yeah. It would be about. It's a seeing thing rather than a strengthening thing. Do you know what I mean? It's a seeing thing, not a strengthening thing.
In terms of perspective. Like it
Yes,
being a seeing thing. Yeah,
seeing as
yeah.
in perspective.
Perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, seeing in perspective.
Yeah.
It's about the flower's perspective in it, or it's about the flower's nature.
Right. Yeah. So where are you going with all this thriving? This is fascinating. Where
Where are we
yeah,
going?
well just I
It's
mean
on a thriving journey.
uh,
It's our destiny. It's our process. It's our process. It's our destination. It's our essence, isn't it?
yeah,
It's built in.
right.
It's
So
built in, but we don't see it.
right.
So we're exploring what thriving means.
Hmm.
So when I talk to people about coming on the podcast before they come on the podcast, I say this is about our learnings, your learnings, catalyzing learnings in the listeners.
Okay.
So we're passing stuff out. We're passing stuff down. Sometimes I'm learning from you. Sometimes you're learning from me.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'm learning from the listeners. Sometimes I'm learning from, when they give me feedback.
Hmm.
When I get feedback on Facebook or whatever, or I get an email. Sometimes I'm learning. I'm learning from them. I'm learning from mentors that I have, authors that I listen to, educators that I listen to. And sometimes I'm the one doing the sharing, but I'm sharing what we have learned.
I love it. And I have to say too, I think about since I'm from California, when you talk about thriving, I'm thinking about the fires in LA. And recently and just thinking about how for me, thriving goes hand in hand with how we respond to adversity a lot of the time. And just thinking about, for example, my brother had to evacuate all the people who lost their homes. And when I was in high school, we had to evacuate our house. And I just remember that terrible feeling of driving back into Laguna Beach in California and not knowing if we had a house that was still standing when we
Yeah.
got back, and how, yeah, how does a community thrive when it's lost so much of, so many of my neighbors lost their homes, my friends. And I just remember in the local Laguna Beach newspaper, it listed every single family in Laguna Beach who lost their homes during the fires. And I was in high school at the time. And I saw that list of names, and I just remember bursting into tears. And I could recognize so many people on the list. And some of them I knew had lost their homes, and others I hadn't spoken with yet. And I didn't realize, my teacher lost her home. One of my coaches, some of my piano friends, and it was just, yeah, I just remember tears coming down my face and thinking, what are we going to do now? What do we do now? And of course, what do you do now? It's like the flower. Well, you rebuild and you get back up, and you become stronger than ever. And for me, thriving is about, that's why I was talking about transformation. How did that fire, or the fires in California right now, the fire in an instant, you can lose everything. I mean, literally everything, your house, everything, all the memories in there. Now, thankfully, my younger friend said to me, well, I wouldn't lose everything now because all of the photos of me are on my iPhone, are on the cloud. So
Yeah.
they said that we wouldn't lose the photos. And I was like, well, except for my baby photos. And I was like, okay, thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we do. How do we do it? We just take the next step, don't
Yeah, exactly. And to have, but sometimes that can take a lot of courage. So, it can,
we? You've got no choice, have you?
I guess so. Yeah, well, I
You're going to
don't know.
you've got, well, in the short term, I guess you go and stay with some friends.
Yes,
I mean, we're assuming that we've made it through the fire,
right,
and we assume that we haven't died in the fire.
right,
That would
right.
be the scary bit for me. Like,
Mhm,
am I going to get out of this place? Am I
mhm.
going to get out of here alive?
Right.
So you've
Well,
got like, if you get out of there alive, like it's like when you have a car crash.
mhm.
I've not a very good driver. I've written off. Do you call that? Do you use that word in the States? Written off? No.
Maybe not in this.
Okay, so um, the if I have a £5,000 car
Mm-hmm.
and I have an accident and the car is insured, right? And it's £10,000 to repair the car.
Mm-hmm.
The insurance company will write the car off
Oh, I see what you're
because
saying. Okay, yeah.
the damage is worth more than sorry, the repairs are more expensive than the
Little.
worth of the car, right?
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
I've written off three. How many cars? Yeah, three. So I'm not a very good driver, or I
Okay.
drive too fast, or whatever it is.
Oh, okay.
And uh, so like when I crashed the car, um, I rang my dad or whatever, and he said I crashed the car, and he said, "Well, are you okay?"
Right.
That you can replace metal, you can't replace sign,
Right.
that
Right.
sort of thing. So if it in the fires, I'd be thinking, well, I got out of there alive. It's more
Mm-hmm.
important. My life is more important than my house.
Right.
I've got all my images
Mm-hmm.
uploaded to the iCloud, whatever. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah, it's a different thing.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking about when you said, well, you have no choice. I just remember some of my neighbors and doing tours of the remainders of their home, and it would be sort of just a concrete slab of foundation and maybe a chimney and some rubble. And I went on so many tours of these homes, and they would show us what they lost, and then I remember their various responses. I mean, they all lost their homes in the same town to the same fires, And some of them, they just couldn't deal with it actually. They packed it in, they left Laguna Beach, they maybe started to try to rebuild their house, and then some of them were very upset because maybe their neighbors weren't super supportive about all the noise that comes with a new house build. And other ones, they were really thriving. They were really taking it. So it was interesting to see how they all responded differently.
Yeah. We all respond differently, yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, and I guess we all thrive differently in a different way.
exactly.
We have to find our own what thriving means to us.
Yeah, exactly. So
And when Simon is talking wisdom, and when he's talking stuff that we don't believe to be wisdom, to put it politely. Right. I think that's a good point, good place to bring it in.
Okay.
Thanks, Jen. Have you got anything else to share that I've not asked you about?
On thriving, well, I guess I would just say that for each and every one of your listeners around the world, I would say that I'm sending you positive energy, and know that if anyone's feeling alone on their thriving journey, that you're not alone, that we're all with you, and we're all hoping and wishing for the best for you, and yeah, we're all with you in spirit on this journey.
That's lovely. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, listeners.
Thank you, Simon.
We'll speak to you again very soon. Take care. Bye.